Please be seated. It is good to be back. This is a parable that only Matthew tells. It only appears in Matthew. It comes right after the one that you heard last week, the parable of the sower with many kinds of seed, in which all of the seeds are good. They just grow differently depending where they land, right? And if you notice, this passage leaves a little bit out again. We have this parable, and then there's two more parables, two little parables. The one about the mustard seed. You remember about how Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like the smallest of all seeds, the mustard seed, but it grows into a beautiful tree, and the birds of the air take refuge. It's stretching a little bit to say it's a tree, but it is large. And then there's the parable of the leaven, about the woman who puts the yeast in and it rises. So there are a couple other things going on, and then even another thing about how Jesus always talked in parables. It says he didn't say anything to them except in a parable. And then we get this last part, which is this explanation. So I put more weight on the parable itself, and I think that parables often have layers of meanings. So in a way, when one is given in the Bible, I think, okay, and I like to think of other ways of thinking about the parable too. So in this one, my garden actually has a lot of weeds, and I would like to blame the enemy. So an enemy has done this. That's the problem. It's not the fact that I didn't get out there this spring and get going. So in this one, we have the wheat, and then the enemy has sown on purpose in the middle of the night bad seed. And it is all coming up together. A lot of the commentaries I read claim that it's a certain weed, and it never really says that in the text, but there's a tradition, I guess, that it's a certain weed that looks a lot like wheat, and that you can't tell it apart until it blooms. And in fact, the kernels of the weed, or the bad one that isn't wheat, are poisonous. So, interesting fact there we have. These are some of the things that I thought about with this. The first one is how the idea that you can't pull the weeds up because you'll pull the weed up too. They're just connected and intertwined in the roots, and they're so with each other that you can't just pluck the bad things out. They're all together. And I think, that's kind of how it is, isn't it? We are all in this together. People are so connected one to another. And yeah, sometimes there are people that, you'd rather not necessarily have to talk to or deal with, but we're connected, and families are connected, and there are people in the families that some seem more wheat-like and some seem more weed-like, and it probably depends who you are. Everybody wants to think they're the wheat, right? But the fact is, we have to figure out a way to be together, because we are totally enmeshed. We are connected in a way, and that's kind of how we're made. We're made to be together. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that in this parable, it is so cut and dried, black and white, right? So you have the good seed, and that's the wheat, and you have the bad ones, and those are the weeds. And, some people are good and some people are bad, but that's not how it is, right? It's not like everybody who's good is very, very good, and everybody who's bad is very, very bad. There's a lot of ambiguity in our lives, and there's a lot of ambiguity in who we are. So that's probably another reason why it's really best to leave the judging up to God. For God to be the one to say this is right and this is wrong. And that's not that we could be passive, and if we see evil happening, that we don't do what we can to mitigate it. But it's not like It's not like that. And there's a lot of ambiguity in our lives. Have you ever had to make a hard decision? And it was hard because there were good things on both sides. You know, if you decided this, then that's great, but then, you know, then you miss out on this. And you might have even gone down and made a list of pros and cons, right? And tried to sort out. But that's how life is. It's not black and white. It's not cut and dry. It's more complicated than that. So that brings me to the third thing, which is that within each of us, there is the wheat and the weeds, right? Within each one of us, there are good things and there are good ways. A couple weeks ago, we had Paul talking about how the good thing he wanted to do, he does not do, and the bad thing he doesn't want to do, he does. That's true for me, too. Maybe it's true for you sometimes. It reminded me of a legend that you probably have heard, but I'm going to use it anyway. It's a Cherokee legend, and the elder is speaking to a child in the tribe, and the elder says that within each one of us there are two wolves, right? There's the good wolf and the bad wolf. And the bad wolf is fear and anger and jealousy and rage and all kinds of difficult emotions and actions even. That is the wolf that is probably the weeds, right? And then there's the wolf that is kindness and love and compassion and empathy. And each one of us has both wolves living within inside. And they're struggling. They're fighting. Which one is going to come out? Which one is going to win, right? And the child says, which wolf is going to win? And the answer is the one that you feed, right? So when I think about this parable, I think maybe the thing for me to take from it is not to cut down the weeds, not to spend my energy eliminating the weeds and pulling them up, because that's just going to uproot everything else. Maybe my job is to feed the wheat, to nourish the good things, to make sure that I'm maybe ignoring those things if I can, and maybe I'm spending my energy and my time and the food that I have to take care of the wheat, to take care of the things that will flourish. When you think about churches, and a lot of churches want to grow, and churches want to survive, churches want to be healthy, and a lot of times we tend to think about how can we be better, right? And what things do we lack, and how can we make those things possible in our church? And some of the good advice that we get is actually figure out what your strengths are. Figure out what is the wheat, what is growing in your church that is good, and spend your energy making those things thrive even more. Take your time and your energy and your resources and emphasize those kind of things. So I'm not sure that's what Matthew had in mind or what Jesus had in mind with this parable, but that's kind of where my brain went with it all week, just to think about trying to be wheat and trying to nurture the wheat that is in me. Amen.